everyone. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by SpeedStream. I'm Jim Cardle. With the Friday, March 13th deadline to introduce bills and legislation upon us, critics and analysts alike are doing their best to determine how successful or conservative this 84th session will be. And one of the key measuring sticks surrounds the issue of pro-life and pro-family issues. Critics and fans alike both say that the pro-life and pro-family forces have had two of their most successful sessions during 2011 and 2013, where they saw substantial defunding of Planned Parenthood and abortion facilities across the state. The Texas Alliance for Life and its executive director Joe Pojman have been intimately involved in those efforts. And what will the success or progress be during the 2015 session be? We're pleased to be able to visit today with Executive Director Joe Pojman from the Texas Alliance for Life. Well, Joe Pojman, Executive Director for the Texas Alliance for Life, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
We appreciate you coming in and know you've had a busy week. You're continuing to work the legislature and try and get some efforts and initiatives started. I want to jump right in if we can, respect your time. Let me first say, as I mentioned in the introduction, you have been very active the last two sessions, 3 or 4 sessions in particular, with a number of successes that have led many analysts to say we've had some of the most conservative, most successfully pro-life legislative sessions in the history of Texas. Others believe that you deserve great kudos for your success. Talk, if you would, for our listeners, Joe, a little bit, just to bring everybody up to speed. 2013, 2011, you had some initiatives. Talk about what you've recently accomplished in the past and what the pro-life issue has been about.
Well, as someone who's lobbied for pro-life laws in the Texas Capitol since 1987, really almost close to 30 years, Texas Alliance for Life's been around for almost all that time. I feel I can say with a lot of confidence that these last two sessions, 2011 and 2013, have been the best we have ever seen. And I'm still pinching myself, Jim, after the success of 2011. And with 2013, I'm just still walking on clouds. 2011 was, of course, the major thing people talk about is the passage of the sonogram bill, arguably the strongest sonogram bill in the country. And that is something which we had worked for several sessions. It's doing a very good job of giving women the information they need about abortion so they can decide if they really do want to go through that abortion, and men and women do not. Consequently, abortions have declined substantially since that law went into effect. As women know, there are alternatives. They can see the unborn child and hear the child's heartbeat before the abortion, and they get to meet with the doctor at least a day before, so they can decide if abortion is something for them. That's very important. In addition, by our public information request, we discovered that Planned Parenthood was receiving $31 million a year out of a huge bucket called family planning funding.
Okay.
They were getting very wealthy off the family planning funding, which is funding for women's health, contraceptives, STD testing, some limited treatment, actually a very narrow range of services. And consequently, because of the efforts of Senator Jane Nelson and Dr. John Zierwas and some other House and Senate members, the $31 million a year they were receiving got cut down to only $2 million a year. And we didn't have to cut those funds. The funds got shifted to other very worthy pro-life organizations that are not part of the abortion industry. The third thing we did that session was, I guess a very modest bill, but very important, a specialty license plate with the message "Choose Life" to promote infant adoption as an alternative to abortion. And now there are some 4,000 of those that have been sold, and nearly $100,000 have been raised to promote adoption as an alternative to abortion. So that was just one session. Many states would be extremely envious of Texas just for any of those bills, and we had 3 that session, in addition to an appropriations bill that continued to defund Planned Parenthood, promote adult, not embryonic stem cells. Embryonic stem cell require destroying human embryos, promoting money for pro-life alternative to abortion agencies, $5 million a year. So that was all, and more I can mention. That was just one session, 2011. 2013, we passed more defunding of Planned Parenthood, continued that. We also passed House Bill 2. And people have heard about that, but that was really 4 bills in one. Banned abortions, late abortions after the 5th month of pregnancy. Vastly increases the safety standards at abortion facilities, so that the goal is that no woman, her health and safety would be at risk if she has abortions. Yes, we're a pro-life organization, and yes, we want to protect unborn babies from conception through natural death. But the Supreme Court ties the hands of the legislature. We cannot ban most abortions. That's the reality. But in the meantime, until we get enough votes on that U.S. Supreme Court, we have an obligation to ensure that women are protected. And I don't know why, but we seem to be the only side that's doing that. The abortion side is not doing that. So some of that bill is so strong, it's being litigated. It's in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. We've been very involved in that process. But it's just been fantastic what this legislature has accomplished. I have never seen that in the almost 30 years I've been lobbying the legislature. I have not heard of anything like that in the other states that have passed in such a short period of time, Jim.
Well, let me ask you, because we Texans like to be leaders in everything, and I think it's probably been the case that some of your efforts have spread into other states, but in particular, let's transition to 2015 here. You all started off the session with what may be the largest rally in front of the Capitol to date, some 5,000 people. I want to read a statement. Governor Abbott sent a note saying to Joe Pojman and the Texas Alliance for Life, because of you, Texas leads the nation in defending those who do not have a voice. You mentioned HB2. Because of you, HB2 became law last session. But let's talk about, after you mentioned the previous successes, we're just getting started a couple months into 2015. What are some of your plans and initiatives for this session? How are things going over at the legislature?
Well, we're just nearing the end of the first stage of the legislature, which is the first 2 months when bills are being filed. And we have 8 major issues we're working on. There's going to be close to a dozen bills filed that we're interested in. I'm a realist. I know that we can't get everything at once, and many of these issues you have to educate the legislature over years. But we have a number of issues we're working on, all of them very worthy. I will say very candidly, we're getting a great reception from the House leadership. Okay, they want to continue the success that we have achieved in the last 2 sessions over the last 4 years. That's very pleasing to me, but not unexpected. One of the issues, if I may just focus on,
please,
is protecting women from being coerced or forced into abortion. I'm talking about minors, girls 17 and under, sometimes by their parents, and especially women in the course of human sex trafficking. Now again, abortion has to be legal. The Supreme Court requires that. But no woman should be forced or coerced into having an abortion that she does not want to have. And Texas has an obligation to take steps that those women are protected.
So I guess if I can't interrupt, you're talking about human trafficking is such a focus during border discussions and border security, trafficking of humans, but there's a sex trafficking
There's
you're referring to.
Very big and very dark component of human trafficking, which is human sex trafficking. And it is forced prostitution from women, sometimes born here, sometimes brought in from other countries. We are told that Houston, among other places in Texas, is a nexus for that horrible activity. I will point out that the biggest abortion facilities in Texas are in Houston, and the largest cluster of abortion facilities are in Texas, are in Houston. So we need to do something to protect those. We're working with some of the House members, for example, while we're talking about the House.
Mm-hmm.
State Representative Jody Laubenberg, who was the author of House Bill 2.
Absolutely.
She's has agreed to carry some of these bills. She's very alarmed at some of the things that we think are going on, forcing women into abortion facilities or forcing minors to have abortions against their consent.
That's State Rep Jody Laubenberg, one of the leading conservatives in the House from just north of the DFW area, I believe.
That's correct. That's right. She's from Parker, Texas. One of our champions. One of our champions. Another one is State Representative Debbie Riddle from Houston. She's got a very interesting bill that would require all abortion facility workers to go through the same training that DPS people, peace officers, have to go through when they're commissioned to be on the lookout for human sexual trafficking. So the abortion facilities have a high likelihood that there's going to be women being brought there for abortions, and they need to be on the lookout for that. I hope that the whole pro-life community gets behind these bills because there is a huge need for them. Sometimes our pro-life movement has not been smart, Jim, and sometimes there's been a lot of unnecessary controversy. But our plea for the pro-life movement, and I think the vast majority of the pro-life groups and rank-and-file pro-lifers are going to see this is common sense. We need to get behind this, and when we do, we will have more success.
Well, on the vein of common sense, let me change gears or direction a little bit. Again, folks, I want to thank you for joining us again for this edition of Texas Insider TV. We're visiting with Executive Director of Texas Alliance for Life, Joe Pojman. Joe, the commonsensical aspect, there's always this national critique, if you would, or conversation about the war on women. But yet some of the things you're talking about, the sex trafficking, the counseling, seem to be fairly common sense, as you say, realistic. Talk about the idea, what Texas may be doing. Is there in fact a war on women, or have there been efforts in the House or Senate? I know you mentioned Senator Jane Nelson redirecting some funds. Address that kind of debate, if you would, real quick.
I think the pro-life movement is pro-woman. And in fact, if you look at our rank and file, if you were at the Texas Rally for Life, you would see the vast number of women who were there, including very young women and teens, because it's so enheartening for us to see how big the movement is and how young the movement is, and frankly, how many women there are. And on my small staff, we're outnumbered. The men are outnumbered by women, and that's just the pro-life movement. The fact is that there has been, sometimes the legislature has misstepped and sometimes got bad advice. In 2011, some of the members of the legislature thought if they gutted this family planning program, they would actually be robbing the abortion industry of funds.
Okay.
The reality is we didn't need to cut family planning money for women's health services, just needed to redirect it away from the abortion providers to those vast number, thousands of legitimate family planning providers in Texas. Some run by the state, some run by counties, some independent, who do a good job for women and are not in any way associated with the abortion industry. And the fact is, Planned Parenthood tries to pawn themselves off as part of that legitimate community. We don't need to cut the whole program. We just need to take the money away from Planned Parenthood and send it to those legitimate providers. So Senator Jane Nelson and Dr. John Zerwas, State Representative John Zerwas, have done that, and last session they doubled the family planning budget to historic levels, giving that money to legitimate providers, those who provide a wide range of services for women, comprehensive primary and preventative care, that's what that's called. Planned Parenthood in no way meets that level. They really don't provide a wide range of services for women. As a matter of fact, we discovered they do not have a single mammogram machine, any Planned Parenthood in Texas, because those machines are licensed and Planned Parenthood doesn't have a single license. They simply they talk about breast screenings, but it's really a manual exam, the way a woman would do in a shower. So the difference is Planned Parenthood provides abortions, the largest number of abortions providers in Texas, and they also provide very shabby care for women. Let's take the money away from them and give it to legitimate providers who don't do abortions and also actually provide a wide range of care for women. That's what Senator Nelson and that's what Dr. Zerwas have done. Before also Senator Bob Dewell, not back this session unfortunately, but he was one of our heroes, was a big advocate of this approach. Last session, as I said, the family planning budget got doubled and Planned Parenthood did not receive a dime of any of those funds. So that is a really good public policy.
You mentioned all these accomplishments, and let me just wrap up with one final question and get you on the road. Again, because Texas is a leader in so many areas, do you see this replicated? Have other states started to take a similar approach? Do you know anything about what other states?
Many states have tried to duplicate what we're doing, and with some success. By far, we have been the most successful in defunding Planned Parenthood, and we have been a leader for that. The sonogram bill is being replicated around, and I will say some of the aspects of House Bill 2 have been replicated, in particular the common sense measure that requires physicians to have privileges at a local hospital. You know, in the course of abortion, sometimes things can go wrong. And if a woman, during an emergency of an abortion, has to be rushed to a local emergency room at a local hospital, that physician, he or she should be able to follow the patient to continue care at the local hospital. That means the physician has to have privileges at a local hospital. So House Bill 2, among the provisions, is one that requires the physician to have privileges. Come to find out, there are only a few dozen doctors that routinely do abortions in the entire state of Texas, and many of those did not even have privileges in the local community. So that's a very good provision. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, the federal court, has upheld that provision, and I'm seeing that duplicated around the country with very good results.
Speaking of provision, we're going to admit that our provision here with you today is run out. We want to thank you, Joe Pojman, the Executive Director for the Texas Alliance for Life. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
We hope you'll come back. Folks, be sure and tune in for future editions of Texas Insider TV. Remember, you're either an insider or you're not. I'm Jim Cardle. Thanks for joining us.